begin. I'm going to have to quit early today at a quarter after, so let's see how far we can get. So we had a little difficulty yesterday with this piece, but actually it turns out to be quite simple. I don't know what was confusing me. Here we go. 3 lines from the top of 23a. Itmar. Kometz de minchas chote sheshemano. So you have a mincha of a sin offering, or a mincha that is brought because of a chait, because of a sin. That mincha does not, according to Torah, get any oil. But we'll see that we may qualify that statement. Rabbi Yochanan Omer Apostle. So what happens if it gets oil in it? Rabbi Yochanan says no good. Reish Lakish Amar who asmo mishachshacho b'shirei log maleu. Reish Lakish says no. The initial rule, the standard rule for this minchas chote is not that it doesn't get any oil. You actually get a little oil by rubbing the flour against the like oily side of the jug. So you do actually put a little bit of oil in the comets before you put it on the mizbeach. So if you get some oil in it, that's obviously not something that makes it possible.
So
So
it's
Rabbi
not
Yochanan
possible.
says no oil at all, and then if you put oil in it, it's no good. Excuse me. Reish Lakish says actually it does get a little oil, standard procedure. So if it gets oil in it, it's not a problem. So Gemara says, okay, Voxy, but doesn't the Torah say, Lo yafsim aleh shemen v'lo yitin aleh levona? This kind of mincha doesn't get any oil or levona or incense. So what are you talking about, Reish Lakish? So Gemara answers, Hahush lo yikbal shemen b'chavrosea. Not that it doesn't get any oil, it doesn't get the regular amount of oil, but it's still, so when the Torah says don't give it oil, doesn't mean, it means don't give it the usual amount of oil, but still it does get a little bit of oil. So Rabbi Yochanan asks, Charev shenis arev b'bol. You have a brisa that says a dry mincha that got mixed up with a oiled mincha. Yakriv, you can put it on the mizbeach. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo yakriv. Rabbi Yehuda says no. My love. So what are they talking about? My love comes to minchas chote diyari bekoma. It's the minchas nidava. So what is this dry mincha charev that the Bryce is talking about? Must be a mincha of a chote, right? And we're talking about the mincha of a chote gets minchas chote gets mixed up with another kind of mincha. So um so um So yeah, so Rabbi Yochanan says, doesn't this show you that dry means dry, or is this low? No, minchas parim v'elim b'minchas kavasim. We're talking about not about the dry mincha, but mixed up with another mincha. But we're talking about two other different kinds of mincha, minchas parim and minchas kavasim, where they get different amounts of oil, right? So we're not talking about the charev at all. But that very brisa refers to that case and the it refers to both cases. So don't tell me that the second case is the same case as the first case. And about that, the brisa says Yikrav or Yikrav. So Reish Lakish answers, yeah, I will tell you that that it's talking about the same case. What the and is not the vav conjunction does not mean and. It means in other words, right? It's explaining or kind of explaining why is it a difference? Why is there a problem of the minchas parim ve'elim getting mixed up with the minchas kvasim? Because one is relatively drier than the other, supposed to be relatively drier than the other.
So which
Okay,
mincha is he talking about here?
Blairop,
Which
Raban,
mincha?
Kometz shemitza shamna al
But
gabayetzi.
which mincha are we talking about here? I'm gonna look at. There's a minchas echota. There's still a minchas of which one? Minchas. I don't know what other mincha. I mean, the mincha that
Yeah, like the minchas, let's say minchas nisa, or the mincha that comes along with a par or an aisle.
but that's not necessarily echota. That could be the tamid, right?
Right, right.
Or it
That's
could
more like a
be
shlamim kind of thing.
and the mincha. Let's say of Yom Kippur when. There is one is part of it is for the choteh and part of it is not for the choteh of the Kohen, the choteh of the Am, and then part of it is the mincha with the
No, those have their own separate rules. When we say minchas chote, we're talking about just the mincha of an individual who sins. Okay. By Rava, komets shen mitza shamno al gabe etzim. You have a kometz that the fistful of flour from the mincha mixed with oil, and you squeeze out the oil onto wood, and then you put the kometz on that wood. Mao. Do we think that like now the oil's been squeezed out of it is it no good? Do we say chibure olin olin damu? Do we say that it's like resting on the wood? The wood has the oil, so the oil is effectively attached to the flour to the mincha, and so it's okay. Olav or maybe olav kolin damu, or maybe we don't say that. Maybe um, the things that this wood is not considered like something that goes on the mizbeach. Amalei Ravina Ravashi, Lav Hainid Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Isn't this what Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish are arguing about the Idmar? Not our machlokas of Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, but a different one. Hamala Aver Shein Kazayis. If you put on the Mizbeach a limb of a sacrifice, it doesn't have a kazayas of meat, ve'etzem mashlimo lekazayas, but it's attached to a piece of bone, and together with the bone, the meat is the meat plus the bone makes a kazayas. So and you do this not on the mizbeach, but you do this with kachim outside the mikdash, which you're not supposed to do. So, but the only problem is if they join to make a kazayas. Rabbi Yochanan says that you are liable. Rish Lakish Amar Potter. So what do we see from this? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayav. Rabbi Yochanan says you're liable. Chiburi olin ki olin damu, because the bone is attached to the meat, and so it becomes like the meat. So you have a kazayas together. Rish Lakish Amar Potter Chiburi olin lav ki olin damu. Rish Lakish would say no. So. The answer is that no, it's not necessarily the what they're arguing about here. There's two different issues. You can ask about Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan, who says that the bone becomes combined with the meat. Adkan lo kama Rabbi Yochanan hasam el biyatzem. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan only said that with the meat and the bone on the mizbeach, or on the that you're burning. The mina de basarhu, because the bone and the meat are kind of like the same thing, right? They're part of the same, they're similar enough, or they're connected enough that they're like one unit. And they can make it kazayis abal hacha. But in the other case, the oil on the wood that we're talking about, that we're asking about, maybe it's different. The lav mina de kometsu. Oil and wood have nothing to do with each other, right? It's not like they came from the same animal, or like the bone and the meat. So maybe so what that tells us is that Rabbi Yochanan sticks with his shita um, it does combine. And you can ask the same thing about Rish Lakish. Maybe like why do we have these two cases have to be spelled out? Because in the case of the bone and the meat, devar mifrashu v'parish lev mitzvah adure, because it could be it's something that could be separated um, from the meat, even once it goes on the mizbeach. So the way I heard this explained is that, like, you have a hot fire, you put something on the fire, something could pop, right? The bone could pop out of the fire. Um, maybe he would agree um, that there's no mitzvah to, if it's the bone that pops out of the fire of the mizbeach, then there's no need to put it back on the fire because it wasn't necessarily supposed to be there in the first place. Aval shemen lav bar mifrashu, but oil is not supposed to be separated, or is not. There's no. It's not normal for it to be separated from the flour once you mix it in. Um, then maybe Reish Lakish would say that yeah, they are connected. So because they wouldn't be separate. Oh, maybe not. So teku. Anyway, we don't know if we can't really resolve these questions.
So the oil is separate from the mincha in this state. So that the flour doesn't go on the wood. It's just the oil on the wood. Is that the case?
Right. Yes, right. So it's like, think of a piece of dough, right? Raw dough, cookie dough or whatever. So if you put it on wood, it's not gonna, fall apart. But if you squeeze out the oil and the oil goes onto the wood, that's what we're talking about.
Well, what would be why would one do that? What's the
Yeah. Great
I mean,
question.
because
All right, so all these
there's no
things are
mitzvah
things that
there,
are not
right? I mean, he wants to bring the komets. He wants to bring the mincha. There's no mincha. There's just wood, a little bit of oil. So was he thinking I can get a kapara, I can get benefit from this just with the oil alone?
Unknown why you would do such. I mean, these are all kind of theoretical cases, which the way I understand it, they're just designed to test the limits or to investigate the parameters of all these rules. Um, but they're all theoretical though. It's like, as you say, it's hard to imagine why somebody would do such a thing, right?
Yeah.
But we're just using these as test cases or limit edge cases to understand the specifics of the rules and the parameters. Next Mishnah. Shnei melachos shel nikmatzu v'nisar v'zeh b'zu. You have two melachos. You have the whole measure of flour, and you haven't done kamitza yet, and they got mixed up together. So if like they got mixed together, but not completely mixed. They're next to each other and kind of combined on their sides. But if you could still take from one side and you know that's from the first mincha, and from the other side you know it's from the second mincha, that's fine. Vimlav pasulos. In other words, it doesn't matter if the rest of the flour gets mixed up, but the komets has to be taken from each mincha. If you can't do that, then it's possible. Second case, komisyonis are b'mincha shalonik mitzah. So you have two menachos. One is you still have all the flour, and the other you've taken the komets from it, and now the komets gets from mincha one gets mixed up with all the flour from mincha two. Lo yaktir, then you can't do it. V'im hiktir, but if you did put it on the mizbeach, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because when you take the kamitza from the second one, you don't know. Maybe you haven't taken the full komets from the second one. Maybe some of it was from the first komets. V'im hiktir, but if you did burn it on the mizbeach, zu shenikmitza ol labalim, the one that had the komets taken from it counts. And the one that didn't have the komets taken from it before the mixture occurred doesn't count because, as I said, you may not have a full komets of the second one. Next case, nisariv kumtza b'shiareho shel chaverta. You have the komets of mincha one, and it got mixed up with, the original pile, the original measure of its own of that mincha, or from another mincha. Lo yachir. Don't take that. Don't take the komets again on the mizbeach. V'im hiktir ol labali. But if you do, then it counts. So the Gemara will examine all of these in detail. Amar Chisda, nevela betela b'shchuta. If you have, we're talking about mixtures. So we're bringing in this question of nevela meat and shechted kosher meat, right? They got mixed up together. Um, uh, so it depends which one is more, right? So the general rule is batel barov, right? If you have two pieces of meat and one of kosher and one that's not kosher, it's batel barov, and the non-kosher one and the whole mixture is considered kosher. Now, nevela betela b'shchuta. So you have one piece of nevela with two pieces of regular kosher meat. So it does become batel. Why? Because the kosher meat can never become tame as a nevela. So one of the rules of the nevela is the meat is tame, right? Once you've made it kosher, it can't become nevela anymore. Okay. But ushchuta ain't betela b'nevela. Okay. So that's why that works, because the identity of the kosher meat is set, like it can't be changed anymore. Ushchuta ain't betela b'nevela. However, if you have um nevela meat if you have a mixture that's more nevela meat than kosher meat, then it doesn't become batel. Because nevela meat can lose its tumas nevela. How so? If it rots, right? Once it becomes rotten and inedible, it's not kosher. You can't eat it, but it doesn't have tumas nevela anymore. So the tumas nevela can leave it, and so it doesn't overcome the shchuta. Once it rots, then it doesn't have tumas nevela anymore.
Don't you have to
So
separate it though? I mean,
sorry,
it's still mixed in there. Still mixed, right? Do you have to separate the nevela? How do you know which is was the
you can't
nevela? It doesn't
separate it,
matter.
but the that's what you're asking.
You can't eat that, can you? I mean, first of all, if it's rots, you don't want to eat it, but I mean, you want to separate it, and it doesn't leave anything. If it was available before, it doesn't not metame, but make them the kosher non-kosher. How can you separate the little bits and pieces?
Yeah. Um, Not batel. So what does it mean that it's not batel? Um, Oh, okay. Here's a so you can't. I mean, you have to consider it tame. But what here's a case where it makes a difference. What if the mixture comes into contact with truma, right? So then you don't know if the truma touched the kosher meat or the nevela meat, right? Now, if you say that it's batel, then everything would be viewed as tame. But if it's not batel, then you have a suffix. And so that truma is suffix tame. So the difference would be that, yeah, you can't eat it because it might be tame, but also you can't burn it because it might not be tame. So that's the difference. Um, if if we consider it batel or not. So indeed, it's not kosher to eat, right? Because it might be nevela, but it's not for sure that each piece is part of the mix. Like that, we don't see the mixture as one unit. We see each piece as possibly nevela or possibly shluta.
So that means you can separate the pieces if, or as if you can separate them, and you could
No,
eat
you
it.
can't separate them anymore. I mean,
Right,
you can't tell which is which, if that's what you're
exactly.
asking. But
So then,
each part of it is considered possibly nevela, possibly kosher.
you can't touch any of it.
Can't
There's
eat.
no
Well, you can't eat it. If you
right.
touch it, it makes you tame. But if it touches truma, then what do? Because truma, if it's only possibly tame, you can't eat it, and you also can't burn it. If it's for sure tame, you burn it. If it's for sure kosher, if it's for sure not tame, you eat it. But if it's doubtful, right, if you don't know the status of the what it came into contact with, then it's you can't do either.
But is there a case here? Does Gemara want to say there's a case where the nevela is bato into the shchuta and it would be permissible to eat it? Is it saying that?
No,
I'm
not
lost.
that.
Not
No,
at
you
all.
cannot. No, it's not saying you could eat it.
So there's no case where it is the nevela is bato to the shchuta, or is there a case? And that's I thought I heard that.
If you have a majority shchuta, then we just said that yes, it is batel and it becomes kosher. The mixture
That's
is kosher.
that seems a little odd.
Well, it does to us, but the actual rules of that's actually the rules of batel barov.
Oh, so there's a
Now, there's a lot of details, like like
what's the
how did it become
proportion?
mixed up? Did it, the classic case is, did you get it from the butcher or did you find it on the street? And how do
Right,
you determine what rove is and so on? But if
right.
it's
Okay.
just like a 2-to-1 ratio, if you had two actual pieces of nevela meat, or one piece of nevela meat and two of kosher meat, and they got mixed up, you can't tell which is which. Then you can eat them all.
Okay.
Don't try this at home.
Okay.
Okay, Rabbi Chanina Amar, but Rabbi Chanina said, so according to Rav Chisda, what we just saw, um, what, um, second, yeah, according to Rabbi Chanina, um, it doesn't matter if the minority can become like the majority. Okay, um, it's just a question of, oh yeah, it's a question of if the majority part can become like like the minority part, but not the other way around. It doesn't matter if the minority can become like the majority. Rabbi Chanina Amar, Kol Shashel Lios Kamo Eno Batel. Anything that can become can change its status to the other side. Um, does not become batel. So if it's possible for the minority to become like the majority, it's not batel. Kamo batel, but a mixture in which it's not possible for the minority to become like the majority, it is batel. So according to Rabbi Chanina, it's the minority ingredient's ability to change that makes the determination. Okay, so which one has to be like the other? According to Rabbi Chisda, it's the majority has to be able to change to make it batel, and according to Rabbi Chanina, it's the minority one that has to be able to change. I'll leave it on. So how does this have to do with what does this have to do with our Machlokas Rabbi and Rabbanan? Yeah, leave it Rabbanan. If it's according to the rabbis, then Ha Amri Olin Hu Delo Mavatle Adade. They said that it's the things that go on the mizbeach, the kachim that don't that aren't mevatel each other. Although mean b'min abatel, but if they're both the same type of thing, they go on the mizbeach, then it does become batel. Eli with Rabbi Yehuda, and if we say it's the dispute is within the view of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Basar Chazusa Azil. Rabbi Yehuda we saw yesterday. It goes by the appearance, right? Remember the water or the wine or the other blood mixed with blood, and Rabbi Yehuda says that it depends on the appearance. Doesn't really matter of their ability to become like the other. It's really the appearance. Vidi min b'minahu. Now here the appearance is the same. That's how they got. That's why they're considered mixed up because you can't tell which is which. So it's min b'mina. So min b'mino, it should not become batel according to Rabbi Yehuda. So how's their machlokos between Rabbi Chizda and Rabbi Chanina? Ella aliva Rabbi Chia. Their machlokas is within the view of Rabbi Chia. To Tani Rabbi Chia, what is that? Nevelu shchuta betela zu bezu. One nevela and shchuta, one becomes batel with the other, but we don't. But he's not telling you which one, right? Is it nevela can become batel to a larger proportion of shchuta, or is it shchuta that can become batel to a larger portion of veil? He's not telling us, and that's the machlokas of Rabbi Chisda and Rabbi Chanina, how to interpret Rabbi Chia. Um, Rabbi Chia Eliyadaman. Okay,
It
fine.
just
So Rabbi
depends on the
Chia,
majority.
who's he like? Whose opinion is he following? Eliyad Rabbanan Amri Olin Hudalo Mavatli Adade. So yeah, can that's the same thing about Rabbi Chia. Like, choose a side, Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbanan. If it's the Rabbanan, then it's the kachim that aren't mevatel each other because they're min b'mina, because they're, but because they're different kinds of things. Hamin b'mina batel. But if they're two different kinds, if they're the same kind of things, then it does become batel. V'yalei with Rabbi Huda, kol min b'mino Rabbi Huda labatel. Rabbi Huda says holds that min b'mino is never batel. So what's Rabbi Chisda talking? Rabbi Chia talking about? We're asking only Rabbi Yehuda. We're actually talking about within the view of Rabbi Yehuda. V'chikam Rabbi Yehuda min b'mino labatel. When Rabbi Yehuda says if you have two similar things, two things of the same type, they can never become batel. Um, that's only when one can become like the other. So we're really kind of combining these two ideas that min b'mino, but that only applies when the one can become like the other.
No, with
So,
kachim and kachim, are they? They can't become but we're talking about the same thing, right?
well, no, it could be two different kinds of kachim.
So the Gemara doesn't that is not mifaret here. If we're talking about two different, it's just saying kachim.
Right.
Oh, does that mean it could be cut? What if they're both kachim kachim or both kachim kalim? Then they're the same, right? So the are we saying that min b'mino applies or doesn't apply here?
It depends according to who. So Rabbi Yehuda would say min b'mino, but bitul doesn't apply if one can become like the other.
Well, they are like each other, aren't they? If they're
No,
both
in terms
kachim
of their
kalim or
halachic
both
status.
kachim
So
kalim.
the case of kachim, I would say yeah, they probably are like each other. But in the case of nevela and shchuta, then one they're like each other in a certain way. Just to wrap it up, Rav Chisda savar basar mevatel azlina, Rav Chanina savar basar batel azlina. So what I was trying to say is that it depends, which one can become like the other. According to Rav Chisda, it's the majority is what you care. Can the majority become like the minority? And according to Rabbi Chanina, the question is, can the minority become like the majority? Okay, how are we doing here for time? Tanan. We have our Mishnah. We have our Mishnah said, "Shnei melach l'shol nikbetzu v'nisar v'zu b'zu." You have two piles of flour for mincha, two measures of flour. We didn't do the kmitza yet, and the piles got mixed together. If if it's still like you can still identify which one is on one side and which is on the other side, and there's enough to take a kmitza that you know that the komet comes from the specific mincha, minchas one and two, then it's fine. But if they're so mixed together you can't do that, then it's not valid. Wait a minute. Once you take the kamitza, you've got this mixed pile. You know that the right side is mincha one and the left side is mincha two, but really they're in one pile. Now, once you take the kamitza from the right side, the rest of the whole pile becomes shirayim, so it's not eligible anymore for kamitza. V'lo vatli shirayim l'tivla. And the shirayim would not would not majority batel the mincha that on the left side that you haven't done kmitza. So money. So who's our Mishnah like? Either Rabbanan, Hamre, Olin, Hudalam, Vatle Adade. The rabbis say it's kachim, things that have that go on the mizbeach that aren't mevatel each other. Hamin b'min, oh batel. But otherwise, you have flour and flour. It's not going on the mizbeach. It should be batel. Al pshita Rabbi Yehuda. So it must be Rabbi Yehuda. Bishlam on the Amar Basar Batel Azlina. And okay, so according to Rabbi Chanina, who said that we go by the minority one, the minority can become like the majority. Batel havekim mevatel. The the majority can become like the minority, like can become shirayim, right? When you take the kamisa from the other side, shirayim kihani, it's also shirayim, right? Elamandi Amar, so that's fine. Elamandi Amar Basel Mavatal is lean on you go by, can the majority become like the minority? Once it's shirayim, it can't become a non-shirayim anymore. Shirayim mikavu tivla. Shirayim can't turn back into non into non-shirayim. Lema delok Rabbi Chia. So does this, push back against Rabbi Chia? So the Gemara says Hasam could Rabbi Zera. We can answer this. We can say it's like Rabbi Zera, another voice. Rabbi Zera. Nemra Haktar b'komets, Nemra Haktar b'shirayim. We talk about burning for the comets and the leftover, right? So Mahaktar Amur B'Komets Ein HaKomets Mevatel Es Chavero, just like the burning of the komets, which is on the Mizbeach, the rule applies that one kometz isn't mevatel the other. Afaktar Hamur B'Shirayim and Shirayim mevatlin as a kometz. So Rabbi Zera says this is kind of an exception, that the Torah somehow kind of specifically calls this out as an exception, and that's how we can understand the thing. Okay, as I said, I have to quit early today. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to pass it on here to tomorrow's daf. Have a good day, everybody.